Welkom bij de Storybrand Podcast, waar wij geloven: if you confuse, you lose. Ruis in je communicatie is je grootste vijand. En het creëren van een duidelijke boodschap is de sleutel om je bedrijf te laten groeien. Dit is de Storybrand Podcast.
Hartelijk welkom bij de Storybrand Podcast. En in deze podcast hebben we een Engels sprekende gast. En daarom doe ik vanaf nu alles in het Engels, want we gaan hem ook publiceren als video op YouTube. So a very warm welcome to anybody listening and watching this podcast, the Storybrand Podcast. We have an English-speaking guest today. His name is Santiago Arango. I've been knowing him since 2016 as he is the right-hand man of Howard Partridge, our business coach. And actually, Santiago has been a coach for us a very long time as well, because we've been implementing the entrepreneurial operating system from Gino Wickman in our company with the help of Mr. Santiago Arango. I think he has an amazing story to tell as he moved from Colombia to the United States. I don't want to share too much. I just want to go into the interview right away and give him the word. So here is Santiago Arango. Santi, welcome in the Storybrand online studio.
Thank you, Don. How are you?
I'm doing great, and I'm really privileged and honored to have you in our podcast out of your busy schedule to make some time so people can hear your story. In the introduction that I did right before we went into this recording, I already shared a little bit how we got to know each other, etc. So I would like to dive right into your background. Can you tell us about because you come from Colombia, you came to the US with your mother. So please tell us a little bit about your early life in Colombia before moving to the United States.
Absolutely. Now, first off, I'm the one that's privileged. I'm thankful and grateful that you get to have me on here. So thank you for letting me be here with you and with everybody listening in. I hope that if you just get one thing out of this that can help you to improve your personal life or your business life, and so be it. So you mentioned about me growing up. So I grew up in Colombia with an O, right? Not with the U. That's South America. And when I was born, honestly, I was born into very, very wealthy environment. My dad was a very wealthy man. He was very successful in business. And growing up as a young kid in Colombia with everything I could have ever wanted or imagined, on the physical side, it was fantastic. It was great. Didn't know any better. We would always go on amazing, incredible vacations. It was awesome in every single possible way over there, except probably one of the most important ones is that, one, my dad was never there. He was always working. He was always in business nonstop. The second challenge is that Colombia, for some of you listening in, you probably have seen a show on Netflix called Narcos, and that's exactly what was going on over there. So where at one point was very nice and amazing and incredible. Yes, everything started to change. Everything started to get dangerous. And as a result of that, my parents, yes, they were divorced. And unfortunately, they started coming after us. We moved year after year after year until we got to a point that we couldn't go anywhere else. And we ended up leaving the country, coming to the United States and living with my uncle here in the States while we requested for an asylum. And that was in 2000 when we arrived in the States.
Wow.
That's a mini version of the whole thing. Absolutely.
Well, I heard we've been knowing each other now since 2016. But the first time I heard your story extensively was in the May conference of the Inner Circle in Houston last year.
Yes.
And I remember you sharing all these pictures of the homes that you lived in, the personnel, just tremendous wealth. Was that one of the reasons that the mafia, the drug, the narcos you just shared about, was that one of the reasons they came after you?
You know, you would think it was more about the money, but I think it was more about what my mom did to affect some of their front line. So what do I mean by that?
Right.
It's really sad and unfortunately true that they were using some horrible tactics. And the tactics that they were using is they were using children to put them in the front lines. So, I
Right.
mean, I can only imagine a military individual, the good guys, right, coming, and then they see children. What are they going to do? And they had no option. In many cases, it was the most horrendous, horrible thing. So, at the time, my mom was teaching children painting. And some of
Yeah.
these paintings that they would make had to do with guns, but not like a normal gun that somebody would have at home for protection purposes or anything like that. But in many cases, it's usually an AK or something like that, quite large. And so my mom just didn't think much about it, didn't even think the repercussions or anything. She just said, hey, look, if you see one of those, don't touch it. Get away from it. Leave it alone. And that in itself caused some problems because some of these kids
Right.
were actually listening, and it's like, I'm not getting in there, I'm not touching this, in some very impoverished areas where my mom was just helping. That's all it was. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that that's really what led to all the problems that ended up, you know, I'm not going to say hunted because I don't think we would have made it if it was truly like that. It was more like causing problems so that we would leave.
Yeah. Yeah. They just wanted her to shut up.
That's it. That's exactly right. Yeah.
So it sounds like a brave mother, though.
My mom is one of the strongest women that I know. I mean,
Wow.
by far. I can tell you when we first came to the States, right? We couldn't do anything. We didn't have a green card to do things the right way, right? But we were living on my uncle. I started work, going to school at that time, and the only thing that we could do was go to people's homes and clean homes. That was it.
Yeah.
So at the time, my mom would be tired and she would still go out there and do it. She would still do it for hours and hours and hours on end. Her back would be hurting, her knees would be hurting, and she kept doing it all to help me. So after a
Amazing.
while of seeing her do that, I would go to help her. And so here's the interesting part, right? Like looking back now, it's so interesting because growing up, I had several mates that would do everything for me, and they would take care of everything, clean my clothes, do my bed, do everything, make us food. It was always all done for you. And then here we are
Yeah.
here now, complete 180, and we're doing that, cleaning people's bathrooms, taking care of their stuff for them. So it was 180 completely on that side. And I tell you this, I have the uttermost respect for anybody that chooses that as a profession. They can make good money and they can take care of their family. It's a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful opportunity for somebody to run that as a business. I can tell you this
Right.
also. If I had the option between not doing it and doing it, I would pick not doing it, right? So if I had somebody clean my bathrooms versus me clean somebody else's bathrooms, I will do it if I have to, but if I had the choice, I would rather not do it.
Yeah. But it's a noble job
A
when
hundred.
you put 100% effort in it. So normally we say from rags to riches, but you went from riches to rags. So I can imagine this being tough on your mind and your attitude. It's being tested to the core, especially with your mother, but also with you. So looking back, how do you think that this experience has shaped your resilience and determination in your personal and professional life?
Yeah, I'll tell you this. It's gonna sound weird, right? But it's the truth. I'm grateful for it.
Wow.
I'm grateful. During that time when we first came to the States, I started going to school. When I started going to school, I met my wife. Now, of course, at the time, she was not my wife, right? But I met this wonderful, incredible woman, right? Her name is Elise, and she was just great. I fell in love with her very, very quickly. So she's taking me on the weekends, like, hey, you want to go to church? And I said, sure, of course. Let's go together. Why not? Right. And so I'm going to church with her, and I'm thinking at the same time, the Lord is working inside of me. And I know this is going to sound odd for some people listening in, but it was it. It was like I would go to church. I didn't want to go to church, just being real. I was just thinking, I'm going to go to church because I'm going with my girlfriend. So I'm going to hang out with my girlfriend. Why not? So we go to church. I would be sitting in those little seats. We've been listening to the pastor sharing some sort of message. And now I'm going to pause for a second and bring it back because I carried a lot of guilt for what my mom did for me. I carried a lot of guilt for us having to leave everything and come to the States with nothing and start, at that point, I carried that a lot of guilt. I felt like that, in a sense, I had done something wrong. And I thought of myself as a younger version of me at 12 years old in Colombia, doing dumb things that I probably shouldn't have been doing. And I carried a lot of guilt. And so here I was sitting in this place, right, shortly after arriving in the States. And I'm listening to this pastor, and the pastor, I can't even remember what the pastor was saying, other than a message that was meant for me.
Wow.
And there was this message that just kept resonating. And very quickly, the pastor would say something that blah, 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 and you are forgiven. And you are forgiven. And internally, I was like, no, what is this? This is craziness. Why are we doing this? I don't believe this stuff. No way. But more, it just kept resonating until one day I just broke down, started crying, didn't know why I was crying, didn't understand it at the time. I was like, what is happening right now? Just tears coming down nonstop. And that was the moment that I got to have a relationship with the Lord. And from that point on, even in the midst of things being challenging and difficult and all these things, I had a grateful attitude, a grateful spirit towards everything, including just, for the first time, we were getting into an apartment with my mom. Wow. At that time, think about it growing up. We had homes, multiple homes in different cities and all this stuff. When we got here, we didn't have anything. And for the first time, we were moving into an apartment. This is a tiny little apartment in a not so nice area. And it was all that we had. And at the time, I was just grateful for that time, grateful for us to be able to have an apartment, for me to be able to have a boom box. Do you remember the boom boxes for people listening in right now? It's like a radio, a bigger radio with bigger speakers, but I was just happy I had that. And I was still going to school and meeting my wife, and I just received my salvation, and everything was different. Everything. It was just seeing life, the world, opportunities, challenges, everything in a very different point of view because I was grateful.
Wow. We'll get back to gratefulness because there's some other reasons why that's so important to you. If you look back to those early days, it's always about meeting people, being at the right time in the right place with the right people. So you met your wife early on in school. They brought you to church. Important, major life-changing moment for you that changed your whole point of view on life. And then there's this point that I remember, and I visited the company, clean as a whistle. Tell us about the moment that you got introduced to that company.
Yeah, it's so interesting how everything just plays out, right? Because
Right.
here it is, right? I come in, actually, how I met my wife, right? It's an interesting little side note, right? I'm very good at math, all right? Let me rephrase it. I think I'm good at math, right? And that year, I had failed math. I failed it. I had to go to summer school. And in summer school is where I met my wife. So had I not failed that class, I would have never met my wife. I never would have had a conversation with her or anything like that. Now, it is such an interesting part. So I meet my wife, and very shortly after, getting to know the Lord, I decided, you know what? I want to marry my wife. And now for people listening, yes, this is 18 years old, right around that age. And it's like, this kid is crazy, right? But it's like, look, I'll tell you the truth. I will never get this lucky twice, right? Like meeting this woman like this, it was so amazing for me. I was like, no, I had to get married and get married right away. So we decided to get married very young. Now this has been 20. Tell me.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned an interesting point. So I don't know who said it, but failing for your math, so your setback became your setup for your comeback. It's interesting, actually. It's always in the rear view mirror we can see these points in time being, utterly important for the future. And actually, that's a very encouraging word for anybody listening to this podcast or watching us. You might be going through stuff right now that you don't understand, but there comes a moment. Sometimes you just have to trust. For you and me, it's God, but whatever you want to call it, you have to trust that things will work out the right way, right?
Yes, absolutely. And in the midst of all the challenges, in the midst of everything, there were always opportunities every single time.
Yeah.
So even in that moment, yes, I'm in there in summer school. Nobody wants to be in there, right? And I meet this beautiful girl over here. We start a relationship. We decide we're going to get married, right? And as we get out of school and we're like, okay, how does this work out? I got to, of course, talk to her dad. I asked for her hand in marriage, very traditional and doing everything in this scenario. And he's like, okay, absolutely. I think you guys are doing the right thing. What are you going to do? Tell me about your plans for the future. My plans for the future was to go to school and go into engineering. And I went through that one, going through for electrical engineering. It's like, okay, got it. All right. Just, making sure my daughter's going to be okay. Then he said, what about right now? What kind of job do you have? And the only thing I'd ever done other than clean homes, right, was on the weekends, every now and then, I would do a modeling gig. That's it. Like, it would pay me to stand and take pictures and get in front of a camera and like that. I don't know that I would call that a job because it's not like I got it all the time. It was every now and then.
Right.
The mall that you were at, remember the Galleria? Yeah. So there's a Levi's, right? Exactly, downtown Houston, where we had the conference over there. It's just reminding me of this. So they had a Levi's store, and they're quite large, and all these glass windows. And one of the modeling gigs I did one time is we were standing where normally you would have the mannequins dressed up, right? So there were like 6 of us on there standing and every now and then moving, and people would be flipping out like, what the heck is going on? Why are these people in glass? And it was the funniest thing in the world to see their reactions. And so we'd be standing there and then and people would laugh. It was a funny job. But outside of that job, I mean, and I say job in quotations because it really wasn't. It was just something fun to do. Then
You made some money.
yeah, made some money every now and then. I'll say it like that. Then he's like, no, you need a real job. And I was like, okay, great.
Yeah.
Do you have some ideas? And then he said, this is my father-in-law talking to me. It's like, hey, you know what? I work at this company called Clean as a Whistle. Why don't you come over here, apply over here? I'm sure you can meet the owners and have a conversation, possibly join. I'm like, what? Why not? Sure, I'll give it a shot, right? So I go in, and that is the time that I met Howard. Now, I could probably talk more about Howard, but I don't want to start crying. So
Right.
Howard is a very close friend of mine. He's a father figure to me. He is the owner of the company, all the companies that I have worked on. And I see him so highly that it is amazing. He's been a mentor. He has been a friend. He has been a coach. He has been every single positive thing in my life, right? And
Wow.
so I go into this company. Now, remember, I'm 18 years old. I don't know how to apply for a job. I don't know how I'm supposed to dress. So I just wore like nicer clothes, had long hair, and I'm walking into when I had hair. And I'm walking in here, and I sit down with, at the time, there were two partners with Howard. So there were three people, right? I'm sitting in front of them. I don't remember what we talked about. They asked a whole bunch of questions. And shortly after that, they just said, yeah, sure, you can come on board. And that was one of the best things that could have happened to me at that time as well. So you mentioned the people, the connections, right? Like there's one thing that led to the next, that led to the next, that led to the next. And the opportunities, it is very interesting that are always there. And when we look back, we see all these links in the chain and how they work together. And it's easy to recognize it, looking backwards. But I do have to say, the first time I went to talk to my wife, that was very scary. If I hadn't done it, I wouldn't be here with you. If I made the decision to marry my wife at a young age, I knew that in itself. I knew the statistics, I knew the numbers, I knew the data that followed that, and I knew the likelihood of that working out was not very high. But you know what? I also knew that she was the right one. So that was scary, and I decided to go do that. Going to talk to her dad at the time, and even nowadays, most people don't do that. They just, decide to get married. They do. But that was scary too. What if he had said no? What if he had said, I don't like you. Get out of here, you bum. Right? Like, I don't know what he was going to say. The same thing going into the position and working over there, because you know what? When I started working over there, I was working very hard. But one thing that led to another, I hurt my back in the field. So I started working at Clean as a Whistle, and I hurt my back, and I was out. I couldn't move. One day, literally in one of these trucks, we're driving around. It's like, man, the pain is getting bad, until one day I just could not move. Go to the hospital. They're checking me out, doing all this stuff. Then I have to go and do therapy for about 6 months. I couldn't do a thing other than go to this place. They stretch you out. You do all these movements, all these things. Went in and I got these, it's like a steroid shot straight into by the spine to lower the inflammation, which was a scary, right, to all these different things. Now, again, another step back.
Yeah.
Where I could say, you know what, my job as I knew it is gone. I can't go back in the field and keep doing this, right? What am I going to do? I'm still going to school. Now I'm married, and I'm trying to work on this position, and I can't move. I'm making no money at this time because I was hurt. I was laying down on the floor. So here it was, challenging issue here, and I go back and I say, hey guys, I can't do that same position anymore. Can I start working in the office? And I'm just like, praise God. They said, yeah, absolutely, come in. So Started working inside of the office, started doing menial tasks because there wasn't a position made for me. It was just like, well, sure, what can you do? We need that stuff over there, that stuff over there. So I started working inside operations. Little by little, started working just about every single position in the organization. Now, the more that I did that, the more that I learned. And I learned the different parts of the business. I learned about first operations. Then I started learning about the sales and the sales process, marketing, admin. And then all of a sudden I started really getting good at it. And I realized, okay, marketing and sales comes kind of easy to me. And the admin side of it is just math, but I can't see myself sitting in front of the computer all day long, every single day. Like I could do it, but not consistently forever. And so as I worked through all these positions in the business, that's where I ended up as the marketing and sales director of the business. And again, one challenge that led to an opportunity. We took action on the opportunity, and then that opportunity led to a position. But even in that position, it created other opportunities, because who wants to go work in a business that you're just moving boxes and little things around and setting things up? That's not what I wanted. I wanted more.
Amazing. Is that the story of life anyway? Because life really is about challenges, right? I mean,
Yes.
we don't go from success to success. We go from challenge to challenge. And by having the right attitude and thinking in opportunities and staying grateful, those things, do you believe that those attitudes, that these things impact? Because a challenge can be a setback. A challenge can destroy you. A challenge can really give you a detour for months or years, or actually make you miss something. Do you think, with all that you went through and all the people that you've seen come and go in the companies that you've worked for and been a leader of, that we get to decide if a challenge is an opportunity or not?
Absolutely. At the end of the day, it's a mindset, right? That's exactly it. In the middle of the difficult things, there will be opportunities. In the middle of the good things, there will be opportunities. Opportunities are abound. They're everywhere. The question is, do we see them, number one, and number two, do we take action on them? Yeah. So one, if we're not seeing the opportunities because we're constantly we have the shroud of negativity around us, that we don't even look at the opportunity for what it is, and in many cases just dismiss it, well, that's a problem, number one, right? So number one, if we can just work on it, I'm not saying it's easy. It wasn't easy at all, being on the floor, not being able to move, and thinking of what are my options. And by the way, just asking that question of what your options are, you will always find that there's an option. There's always an option. In many cases, right, 2, 3, 4, 5, and as more you start thinking about it, it's like, oh my goodness, I got opportunities. Now I just have to pick one. And so you make the choice, right? So you asked a question about that. And I do have to say, I don't know where I heard this, but it was this guy, very successful individual, that was saying, I've never learned anything from success, but I have definitely learned a lot through challenges and failures.
Right. Yeah.
Now, it's like very, very interesting to think of it from that perspective. But you're right. In the middle of the challenge, if we work on just being grateful, even for the few things that we have, I'll pause for a second. Right? Let's put it into perspective. I still deal with the challenges of my back. I mean, every now and then it'll go out and it'll hurt, and I can't move very well. And little by little, it starts to get better again. And it just goes into ebbs and flows and all this. Because it'll never be 100% fixed. I just learn how to cope and deal with it, right? So when we think about the opportunities that are around us, right? If we don't take action, right? If we don't take action, then we'll never know.
No.
And if we don't even try, how in the world are we ever going to know? So here's the thought, right? Growing up in Colombia, I did get to see a lot of poverty. Now, growing up over there, I didn't see the difference. I didn't think much about the difference. I will never forget, there was this lady that lived in this, it was, for lack of a better word, a shack, right? It just had, kind of 4 walls, but it wasn't really 4 walls. It was 3 and this kind of plastic thing on the front. The whole floor was mud. And in the middle was like a little fire. And then over to the side was a homemade kitchen. And she lived there and she was happy. She was content in that. Now, I never knew, where she get her water, right? She had some running electricity sometimes. Where'd she get that? I don't know. But to wake up here every single day, to just be able to turn on the lights and boom, we got power working. Yeah. I go to the bathroom and just turn on the faucet. I go to the kitchen and just open it and drink clean water that I have
even question.
Right. And it's, again, in many cases, we don't think much about these things. But if we just pause for a moment and start being grateful about the things we already have, my goodness, we have it so good.
It's just life a lot easier, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you've probably heard about this, right? The people that have to walk for miles to get clean drinking water and carry it back. I mean, Don, you've been working out, right? So I can just imagine, doing a squat and you have the bar on the back of your head, right? And then you're walking with water on both sides for, several kilometers. Yeah. Can you imagine?
And the thing is, with water, it doesn't stay still. In the gym, we have this thing we can put on our back with water in it, and the water moves when you move. So it's tough.
Oh my!
I want to go back to your relationship with Howard, if that's okay with you, because it's interesting that during your time at Clean as a Whistle, and you start at 0, and you climb up the ladder, you discover your talents. They're seen, they give you opportunities, and then there's this specific moment. I don't know the exact story, but I think it was you and Howard driving and thinking about coaching and starting a business. How was it on a drive? I don't know. You've been somewhere and you came up with this idea.
Absolutely. So I'll take a step back, right? So 1997 was around the time that Howard started Phenomena. Okay. And it actually started because, Howard had read the book, The E-Myth by Michael Gerber. And for the first time, he started thinking about systems and creating systems in the business and how the system is what's going to give you the freedom. So Howard is a master at implementing, right? An idea comes and he decides to do it. He goes and does it. No ifs, ands, or buts. Not like, we'll do it someday. No. Boom, gets to work, right? So Howard starts building all these systems at Clean as a Whistle. And people would be asking him, how in the world are you doing that? Right? How do you pull this off? I remember you, dude. You were the guy that was kind of struggling with this and that and the other. And now here you are. You're doing amazing things. How did you do it? And so people are asking him. And so Howard just, at the time, it's like, well, I'll show you how I did it. And that's when Phenomenal started. Now, I say Phenomenal, not Phenomenal Products, because at the time it was just products. People were asking me, how'd you do it? Well, instead of me telling you again, let me just write it out and show you how, right? So at the time, he started it with these simple folders and recordings for people to listen to how he did it. And that was great. That went for several years, right? So 2000 comes in, I joined the team. 2002 or sometime around there is when I got hurt. 2003 and 4 is when I started really growing through the organization. And I go to this event. Now, events are so powerful. Anybody watching right now, please, if you have an opportunity to go to a business event, go. If you know Don and he has those events that he puts, please go. Just go. Just attend one, because all you need is one before you're like, oh my goodness, this makes me think and act differently. Go to the next 3, 4, 5, forever. So I go to this event. I go to this event in Arizona.
Mm-hmm.
And this was an event that Infusionsoft used to put on. And it was, oh my goodness, I can't remember the name of the event, but it was a great event, right? So I go onto this place and there's all these speakers and they're sharing all this stuff. Now, remember, at the time, I'm the marketing and sales director. I'm going to school for electrical engineering at night. So I'm doing it part-time to go to school. That's why it's taken so long. I'm on year 3 of electrical engineering, and I'm going on this place because we own this piece of software that we had never used, right? We had it. It's just sitting there.
Yeah, you had this marketing and sales tool, this marketing and sales automation tool, Infusionsoft. If people don't know it, it's called K-E-A-P right now.
Yes.
You're still using it and clean as a whistle, right?
Absolutely. So here's the crazy part, right? So I go to this thing, and then all of a sudden my eyes are opened. Oh my goodness, look at all the opportunities again. Like, one, let's start using the software, which is interesting because that was 20 years ago, something like that. It's crazy how time has gone by. We set it up to this day. It still works automatically. Like, we don't even touch this thing, and it's constantly just working on the back, right? So I go to this thing. I see all these speakers. One of my favorite ones that I got to see at the time was Gary Vaynerchuk, right? I got to listen to all these folks, and I'm listening to everybody over here, and then all these little things start coming together. Because right around that time, right, I had been helping at the events that Howard would put together, but I was never attending the events. I was just going there to help to set up, breakdown. That was my thing. I would just go help set up, help breakdown, set up, breakdown. That's it. So I see this picture and I'm like, wow, why can't we help people like this? Now, at the time, the events that Howard was putting together was in a small room. I'll never forget it. It was in you'd have to see a picture. It's hard to even describe it, right? So we do go in the car. We're driving, and we went to, I don't remember where, but we stopped to eat some food, right? And I remember texting him or emailing him or calling him one of the ways. I say, Howard, we need to talk. So we sit down. And I just start like, boo, oh my goodness, I saw this, I saw these opportunities. Like, why can't we just build something like this? What if we could do something like this? What if we could do something like that? That would be just incredible and amazing and just awesome. And for the first time, I was even thinking like, you know what, maybe, just maybe, I shouldn't be doing electrical engineering. And maybe, just maybe, I should be doing this. And then one thing just sealed it. And this is the main reason why I am here, why I do what I do, why I get to connect with people, why sometimes I do it if I'm traveling, tired, or not tired. Doesn't matter. Why? The why, right? So I'm helping at these events. And one of these events that I went to help at, I would always go talk to people. The people that are at the events, like, hey, tell me about it. Why are you here? What's your name? Tell me. And then people at first, but I'm struggling, challenged in the business. I don't make enough money out of my team members, or a bunch of different things. And then I got to meet one of them that he said this, man, last time we were here, last time we were here, you were in challenges. This time, the person was there on vacation. They were there. Their spouse was in the room in the hotel. Their kids were with the spouse in the room. They were still sleeping. It was sometime in the morning. And then afterwards, they were going to get in their car and they were going to San Antonio, which is 3 hours from Houston. And they were going to do this thing right around from San Antonio going to Austin. They were getting to know Texas, right? And it's like, wow. So last time you were here, you were struggling. And now you have more freedom. And then the man that I'm talking to, he started breaking down. And he just said, now I get to spend the time with my family, with my children. And that right there, if you remember earlier, I told you I grew up with a whole bunch of everything other than my dad, who was always working.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden I see, man, if now this is helping people to have those families be together again, how amazing is that? Then I go to this event, right? I get excited. I'm sitting with Howard. And I just said, Howard, okay, I mean, what does this look like? And Howard himself is like, I'm not exactly sure what this looks like, but let's go. Wow. And what was amazing it's the best, again, opportunity that presented itself in front of us. And from that point on, the number of lives, the number of businesses, the number of relationships that have been positively affected as a result of it, I've never actually counted them, but I do get to meet the folks and just the things that they share afterwards. And it just makes me so fulfilled, so excited.
So for people listening or watching, Inner Circle now is a full-fledged coaching program with a team of coaches that have quarterly meetings coming together in Houston or other places of the earth, and weekly live webcasts, small groups coming together online. There's a lot of things, classes that you can follow, a total program you can follow to actually, get a turnkey business, right? A business that does not depend on you, a business that runs itself with you being the owner, or if you want to sell it, but not be a slave of the business, right?
Exactly right. Yes.
And for a lot of people, that sounds like a dream that will never happen. But in the Inner Circle, many, 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 many folks have reached that dream.
Yes.
And they come and speak at the conference, right? So
yes.
It's possible. It's possible.
Absolutely. And it's interesting, right? Because it is on one end all about the systems. On the other side, it's really more also about the community. Because we need both. We need those people in our lives, not just the trainings and the teachings, because that is one part of it that's crucial. No question about it. We look at that, but we look at a missing component usually in many cases, that if it was just about training and teaching, well, you could probably find most of that information, the content, on YouTube. But it's not the same thing, not having a relationship with the person, not being able to speak into somebody's life, not having the support, the encouragement, and sometimes the accountability that comes as a result of living in a community with other folks that are like-minded. So it's incredible and amazing, absolutely, as how that worked out. So here we were sitting, talking. Yeah, I would have never thought that this is what I was going to do, because I always thought I'm going to do engineering. But what is interesting at the end of the day is, the thing that I love to do as from a little kid was fixing things, fixing machines. In many cases, it was computers, taking stuff apart, breaking them down, and looking at stuff. From a little kid, breaking my cars and toys and making new cars and toys with different parts, right? All of this, to nowadays, with the idea in engineering was I was going to fix other problems. But now I realize that those are different types of problems, and there's more important problems that I see in the world, because I truly believe that small businesses are the engine that moves everything. We tend to think of the massive ones like the Googles and Apple and Amazon and these massive corporations, but really it's small businesses around the world that make all the difference. In many cases, I will get to know the owner of a small little restaurant, and I know the challenges that they have right then and there. And if we can help those two, husband and wife, to have a little freedom in their business, that's going to affect the whole community, because now they can hire somebody, maybe 2-3 people. Those people can make a difference in their lives. And before you know it, starts changing the small community. You multiply that out times hundreds of thousands or millions, you're changing the world. One small business at a time. Yeah.
It's so interesting. So your energy comes through the screen, Santi. I'm so happy with that. I love your energy. You've been to Holland. You've spoken at our Storybrand certified guide group about Ziglar goal setting, about the DISC human behavior model. We need to set a new date, right? I mean, we really should.
Absolutely.
And,
Yeah.
and you've been training our team at our other company. Used to be just a while back, the name of our company was Schmid Communications, and we changed it to Buzzlytics. And we have each quarter we have a day with you, and you pour your energy in there. Maybe we can talk a little bit about EOS, the entrepreneurial operating system from Gino Wickman that we follow, which is very tied to, the same vision as you already had at the Inner Circle. But one of the things that I want to point out in between is that in 2014, I got this email from Tom Ziglar, the son of Zig Ziglar. And I still have this email. And in the email, it said it was December 2014. I had been on the mailing list of Ziglar for eternity in my feeling, because I used to be a member of the Vault, the Ziglar on-demand Vault, and I read his books, and I did Automobile University, so to say, and listened to all these sales things from Ziglar. And he introduced me to Howard Partridge. I never heard that name. I didn't know who Howard was, but I thought if Ziglar endorses somebody, it must be good. So I remember I Googled Howard and I saw this 5 secrets to a phenomenal business. It almost sounded over the top, like phenomenal. And I thought, well, the Ziglars love it, so I'm going to buy the book. And I remember that reading that book, I was still a sales director myself, a sales and marketing director in a company, but a dream started to grow to have our own business, right? So, yeah, and then your faith and Howard's faith and your coaching and your belief and encouragement and accountability started to work, where we went from 2016 to where we are now, which is a big difference. We won't get into that. It's for another time, but it's an interesting component, that the Ziglar philosophy. Can you share a little bit about, because you are a big Ziglar fan. His quotes come out of your mouth many times. And for a lot of people in here, especially in Europe and in the Netherlands, people, if you name Zig Ziglar, there's actually quite a few people that know him, but many will say, Zig Ziglar? Who's that? So take us a little bit on that journey, because maybe people will start Googling Zig Ziglar, and his philosophy has been so valuable to your life, and you've been sharing about gratitude and about attitude and about opportunities, and a lot of that comes back to Zig Ziglar, right?
100%. What's interesting is that in many cases that now I don't even catch myself saying the words that Zig was saying, right? And I'm sure if I were to watch this replay, I'd be like, oh yeah, there was. So I do have to pause for a second and attribute a lot of the things that I say as a direct result of the things that I have heard and listened and read Zig say as well. So let me take it back for everybody as well, right? So here we are. I'm working in the office. And now in the office, we used to have this back area where we had all these like books and CDs and just all this stuff, right? Now, those are books and CDs that Howard was selling to businesses, right? And I go back there. Remember, at the time, I was not the marketing and sales director, right? And that was an operations. And I remember going back there and I see this thing. It's like a box, right? It was called the Born to Win seminar. I didn't know what it was. It looked really cool. And I borrowed it. Okay. Now, I've said this to Howard a million times, right? Like, it's like, Chief, I would have given that to you, man. And I was like, man, I know, but I wanted to listen to it. Nobody was there. I feel terrible about it. And I always, I'm grateful and I feel bad that I borrowed it. But I did put it back always, right? And I even put a note inside of it. Now, besides the point. So I grab it, right? And it had these CDs. By the way, for some people maybe listening in today and you don't know what a CD is, I was having a conversation about this with my daughter and she's like, what? Compact disc, think of, what Apple Music does or Spotify. Well, it used to be in a, plastic thing that you would pop into a machine that would read this so you could hear it. I was like, oh, okay, cool. Right. So I was talking to her. She's like, oh, what? Oh my gosh. So anyway, so here we are. I take this set of CDs from this Born to Win seminar that Zig Ziglar had put on. So I'm listening to this, and for the first time, I started listening about goal setting. I started listening to this very powerful quote that says that you can have anything you want in life if you will just help enough other people get what it is that they want. I was saying, man, that sounds simple enough. We can help a lot of people get what they want. What do people want? Well, just ask them. Let's start having a conversation about what they want. In many cases, they've never even thought about it. And now you're asking them questions and it's an exciting thing. I started doing that with our team members. And that was one of the reasons why I was able to rise through the organization. Amazing. The same thing, then another quote came from Zig that this one is the one that changed my life. Now, I'm looking at the camera angle and you can only see a few books behind me. But if you could see the wide, then you would see a whole bunch of books on the other side. And I used to hate to read. I would not read. If I was to read, I would fall asleep. I would get sleepy and not read anything. But now I read a lot. And it's all because Zig said something that was very powerful. He said this, and this is for everybody listening in. And if you're not the person you want to be, if your business is not what you want it to be, if your relationships are not where you want them to be, Zig said this, you are who you are and where you are because of what's gone into your mind. But you can change who you are. You can change where you are by changing what goes into your mind. It's very simple and very powerful, both at the same time. In 2 weeks, we're going to be going to Ziglar. And we're helping so that Ziglar does the Ziglar Coaching Summit. And we do that for them. It's such an amazing...
By the way, Storybrand has a big part in that event because I saw that Don Miller is going to speak at the Ziglar Summit.
Yeah, Don Miller is going to be there. Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, it's not that we have to go do another event or anything. No, we get to do this. Isn't that exciting? We just had an event last week. We had Brian Tracy at our conference. Brian Tracy, who is in his 80s now, he sat down for an hour and all I did was write down as fast as I could the content, the information, because it is true. You are who you are and where you are because of what's gone into your mind.
Yeah.
You change your
Amazing.
mind.
For those
You
that
change
don't know, right.
Yeah.
Well, for those that don't know Zig Ziglar, he was born in 1926. He passed away in 2012, and he was one of the biggest motivational speakers ever. And for decades, he filled stadiums. I mean, like big ones. And you could compare it with, for example, a Tony Robbins today. He just did it exceptionally well for such a long time. No scandals. Just very with a lot of integrity. And I think that there's still a huge fan base in the world for Ziglar because he made you feel like you are born to win, right? He really brought that home. He wasn't the hero in his story. He's really the guide in the story, right?
Absolutely. You know, it's interesting. You know, I got the pleasure, the opportunity to meet Zig Ziglar. And we were at an event in Dallas, right? And so here we are, we're sitting down at this event. Now, this is also my first experience with learning about DISC. And so here we are, Zig is standing on stage and he's sharing all these sales, ways and scripts and processes and all these things. And Zig is doing it in his own Zig way that I highly encourage everybody to at least at one point, go on YouTube and type in Zig Ziglar, Ziglar. And you might have never heard about him, but you could hear him today because over 250 million people's lives have been changed as a result of his teachings. Now that number is probably a lot bigger. I will say this, the first time you hear him, right, that we know of, exactly. The first time you hear him, his accent is a little bit different. So just wait a little bit longer and you're going to get used to it before you know it, and you're going to love it. So just stick with it and it'll be incredible. Listen and apply the concepts. So here we are, we're in Dallas, right? I got to see Zig Ziglar and I said, man, this is truly what happened. I was like, that guy was awesome. Like, amazing. He's just as good as he was on an audio tape. But that wasn't even the best part. The best part was what would happen afterwards. He would finish speaking. He would be sitting down. And then there would be, of course, a long line of people wanting to talk to him, right? Like, I don't know of other speakers that normally do this, right? I've seen speakers that like, oh yeah, no, I gotta go, I gotta finish, I'm out. Not Zig. Zig would always stay. He would stay to talk to the last person that was on that line, regardless of how long it would take, regardless if it would cost him a flight. Doesn't matter. He was there for them. The way that you felt, he truly believed in that. So here he would be talking to one by one. And he would share all these amazing things. And then there would be some cases, some folks that would say, hey man, I want to be just like you, right? I want to be the next Zig Ziglar. And Zig would kind of jokingly say, well, you know what? Well, I'm sad. It's like, why? Because you could be the next Don Schmidt. Why do you want to be somebody who's already been there, right? And then he would jokingly, bring that up and bring it up, but he was more about you becoming the person that God created you to be. And then he would say something so simple that it was very simple and can be dismissed, but he would say, God don't make no junk. And it's the truth. Every single person listening today, God created you for a reason. And every single day that you wake up, guess what? You get another day to go and keep doing it, keep growing, and keep helping other people that are around you. So Zig made that real for me as he would be sharing and as he would be talking to one-on-one, every single person. He never dismissed anybody. He never blew anybody off. He never did anything that was in a negative way. Now, here's an interesting part. I'll share a little side story though. So in the world of speaking, there's always these folks that are two-sided, right? There's the front, the on-stage persona, And then there's the backstage people. Now, some of them on the backstage, unfortunately, they're not as nice as you would think, right? But some of them are great and everything else. Now, here was Zig. Here, Zig was at the top of his game. He could, fill stadiums. He would talk to people that were presidents, heads of states. I mean, you name it, right? So the coolest part is that I got to see this great marketer. Now, this guy is a copywriter, okay? And for some folks, maybe you've heard of him. Some folks, maybe you haven't heard of him. But he's probably one of the best copywriters alive. By the way, I thought he had passed away, but he hasn't passed away, right? So I see him on stage. Now, his beliefs are very, very different than what Zig's beliefs are. And you could not put two very different people together. Now, what was interesting is this guy would actually speak after Zig Ziglar. Now, just put it into perspective. That's a difficult thing to follow. You're in a stadium. There's anywhere from a few thousand to several thousand people. Zig Ziglar is done speaking, and then he says, okay, come see me at the table. Everybody stands up and starts walking out, and now it's your turn. Can you imagine following Zig Ziglar? You got to make people turn around, sit down, and get going. So the good thing is, because he was such a good copywriter, then of course he was good at speaking as well eventually, and he did amazing things. Now, again, the gentleman, I'm not saying the name on purpose, right? Because they have very different value systems. But what was interesting, I got to see him the other day at another event, whatever it was. And the amount of respect that he had for Zig was unbelievable. He held Zig Ziglar at a completely different level. And for the simple reason that he was the same person that he was on stage as he was outside.
Beautiful.
That travels, that connects with people. Because here's the other part of this. Think about so many people in business. They tend to separate their business life and their personal life, and they start thinking like they have two lives. Now, wait a second. Yeah. We only get one.
Right.
So we are one human being, not a human doing, right? It's not like we do stuff we're going to do. Yes, we are doing, but we're a human being. Who are you? Yeah. This idea of who you are was very clear into Zig. And this idea of who you are and who you want to be is what changed me as a result of Zig.
Yeah. Very powerful message. I think, talking, if I look at this hour that we've already been talking.
Sorry, man. I didn't even see the time.
No, but it seems like we're talking about challenges that life throws at us and the way that we deal with it from an attitude perspective and seeing opportunities and asking ourselves this question that you mentioned when you laid on the floor, on your back, not able to do anything, but ask yourself, what are my options, right? And this whole Ziglar philosophy is actually something that has, and that's the beauty of the email that I received from Tom Ziglar. And it was not a personal email. I didn't know Tom Ziglar by the time. It was just, me being one of the many people receiving that newsletter. But Howard and Ziglar meeting each other and starting to work, because by that time, Zig Ziglar, the Ziglar Corporation, was actually very focused on the Fortune 500 companies. And Howard, you guys were really focused on the small business community and bringing that philosophy together with the systems and the ideas of it. It was really a match made in heaven, right?
Absolutely, 100% without a doubt. It was interesting because, okay, so the folks that have seen or listened to Zig, maybe you know the story, but for others, you may not. So Zig fell and he hit his head. And that created, of course, a lot of challenges, but more specific, it was his short-term memory that was affected as a result of that. So imagine if what you do for your whole life is to speak in these large arenas with all these folks, your short-term memory is a very important component of this. So I'll never forget it, because we had Zig after the fall at our conference, and he came, Tom, his son, and Julie, his daughter, they both came, and Julie was on stage with Zig, and they would have all these conversations. But here's the beauty. Okay, here's the beauty. Just to share one more thing about Zig before I share the connection with how this whole thing came together with us. So here was Zig Ziglar on stage. You could say, in a sense, he was unfiltered, right? Like, he was completely open about everything. And as a result of the head injury, even more. The most interesting part is that he would always go back, and in many cases, he would always talk about his wife, the redhead. The love that he had for this woman, and the importance that he would say, you know what, having the home court advantage, having a strong relationship at home, it's going to make everything else so much easier. He would talk about his relationship with God. In other words, he would always be talking about these relationships and the importance of the relationships in your life. That if you have just a few, not a million relationships, just a few, the most important ones that are solid, that creates your basis that you could build on to go out there and do amazing, incredible things. And he would always go back to her. In many cases, you would look at pictures of Zig, and whenever Zig was in the same picture as his wife, Zig was not looking at the camera. Zig would always be looking at his wife. And it in that point even would make me think about my relationship with my wife, because I love my wife, of course. It just made me realize, my goodness, the level of love and respect that he had for his wife was amazing. I want that between me and my wife. So this idea, this powerful idea that we all got to see was awesome. It was this transparency that was beautiful. And then, of course, here they would come to our events. Tom started traveling more to our events. And then, of course, Tom would be in the back talking to people. Not to be disrespectful or anything like that. No, he would be talking to people because he wanted to know, who's this guy Howard? Is he legit? Yeah. Is he a good guy? You know, has he ripped people off? Because unfortunately, there's a lot of folks that call themselves a coach or a business person, and they're just terrible people. So Tom would be talking to people and just asking questions like, is he really a good guy? Oh my goodness. And every single time, we love Howard. Everything is amazing. He's incredible. He loves people. Everybody in the organization is great. Little by little, those are the things that led to this beginning of this relationship that has led to, it's more than a partnership. It's like a family. Like, we got to become a part of the Ziglar family. And it's this amazing, incredible relationship that we get to have with them to continue the legacy of Zig Ziglar through Tom, and just continuing to expand on that for many people to get to know who Zig was, number one. But more important than who he was is to implement the practices and the beliefs from Zig so that every single person can grow as a human being to become the person that God created them to be.
And that's where a business is all about, right? A business is a community as well. So these lessons that you mentioned earlier, Santi, that community is a very important component of the inner circle, because if it's all about knowledge, information, but the transformation is really in the inspiration of the community, right? It's not so much in the information. A full head has never changed somebody into a beautiful person, but a full heart combined with knowledge in the head that is what changes people. So, I can testify to this myself, that I remember Tom, my son, for his school, he needed to go and have an English speaking experience. He could do that in a company here in the Netherlands, but I immediately thought of the Howard Partridge Inner Circle family. And so I said, write a letter to Howard, and but please let me read it before you send it. And I had him, so I was really perplexed by his English. And then I added one sentence, don't feel obligated to have me come to the United States because of my father, only if this is something that is an opportunity for you as well. And so he came, you spent time with him, Tom Ziegler spent time with him, Howard, the whole team. I still have this beautiful picture where you all were in this picture together and have so much fun. And a while back, I asked him, so what is the most life-changing experience? He's 20 years old now. So what is the one thing that stands out of every other experience in your life? And he didn't have to think twice. He immediately said, oh, that's easy. That's my 2 weeks or 10 days, being at Phenomenal Products. And he mentions this word family. I've never seen a group of people anywhere in the world that love each other and just are, each other's biggest promoter. How valuable is that? That's for any entrepreneur listening right now, any manager, any professional. If you can build a community in your business or with your clients even, that will change your business for the better. I love artificial intelligence. I really do. The opportunity side of it. Now, there's risks. There's a lot of things we have to deal with and come up with solutions, because technology goes faster than I think we as humans are able to manage right now. I do love artificial intelligence. We use it every day and more to automate processes, etc. But I think that in the age that we live, this thing of relationships and communities and having these people around you is going to be way more important than ever before. What is your take on that?
100% agree with that. So here's the challenging part. Because when we get this, right, it's easy. It's like, oh my goodness, I see it. I totally understand it. It's like, perfect. The hard part is when somebody has never experienced community.
Yeah.
Where they, right now, there's people listening to this and they're thinking, well, that's just weird. What the heck are these people? Family at work. They're not really family. How do you think of it like family? How do you fire your kid? And that's part of it too, as well. That's the reality of it. So it's an interesting part. So last week we had our conference, and I was driving with one of our team members. His name is Austin. Austin's an awesome dude. Awesome dude. So I'm having a conversation with Austin, and I'm bringing him to the place that we're having the event at. We had just done a tour of the company. And so we're driving back. The bus is behind us carrying, 50 people on the bus. And so we're heading back out. And I'm just talking to him. We're having a conversation about how's your day? How's everything going? So first we went logistical, like, all right, cool. We're going to be back at this time. And then we're hitting traffic. So we just started talking, right? And then he opens up and he just said, hey, man, I'm so grateful. I was like, tell me more. What are you grateful about? How so? Yeah. He's like, look, I love my family. I love my parents, my brothers, my sisters. I have friends over here. Just this is different. These are, this is how he said it. Y'all are my people. My people. And in a sense, it's a community. Yes, we're using the word community because there's no other word that fulfills that. But these are your people. So here's one thing I'm going to say. We had one of our inner circle members. Her name is Sherry Perry. And at one point, Sherry Perry struggled with her own team members. She's like, gosh, I can't get them to do the stuff. They're not performing. I need better performers. I need better, all this stuff, right? When she realized that those are the people that are already there, somebody asked her a question. What are you doing with the people that God gave you? She had to stop and realize these are my people, but I'm not treating them like they are my people. What if I started treating them like they are? What if I started caring about them, figuring out goal setting, understanding what they want? You know, remember the quote from Zig, you can have anything you want in life if you'll just help enough other people get what it is that they want. And yes, of course they want an income, but that's the bare minimum. What do they want? They want better relationships, better things in their lives. What if we could be one of those relationships that they can help, that they can build? Wouldn't they want to do things more and better and faster and more effective because you care about the person instead of because you have to? It changes everything. It changes performance. It changes the results. It changes the way that we do things. Our standards are so much higher as a result of it.
Can you share like a couple of steps or tips, like really short nuggets? Like, man, if you are an owner of a company, a manager, a leader, and you hear this, you watch this podcast and you think, my goodness, this really resonates with me. I would love to build a community. I just don't know how. What are the steps that people can take?
Perfect. So first of all, you need to figure out who you are. What do I mean by that, right? But it's kind of difficult to say, well, I am Santiago Arango, and we just spent, you mentioned over, I see the time now, hour and 15 minutes talking, but we're still not there, right? Like we'd take forever just talking to one another, and we would just eventually in the next 6 months or 6 years come up with something, right? In the business, we got to have some words that help us to describe who we are. And that's where we talk about what we're trying to accomplish, right? What are the core values that fit within that and why we do it, or your mission, your values, your purpose, right? In a sense, we're trying to put together into words what the vision is for the organization. Because if you have that, you can use words to describe what is a right fit. Once you know that, once you get people that fit that, my goodness, okay, what does this actually look like? So let's say they fit the core values. They're solid. Perfect. We bring them in. We're going to test those core values, as Patrick Lencioni would say, and make sure that you have a process that you can build to make sure that they do fit those core values and not that they're lying that they are or anything like that. So they come in. Now you got them. What are you going to do? Right? You go through the onboarding and you start going into training. Your training has to be solid, please, super solid. Don't just like wing it. Don't just hope for the best. Don't just like get a person right next to you and say, just do what I do, right? Like have some solid training systems in place to get that wonderful team member to be successful at what they do. Good training. Absolutely, without a doubt. We cannot skip that one. And at the same time, let's figure out what they want. Let's figure out their goals, both personal and business, right? Like if somebody says, I just want to make more money, well, that's great. What are you going to do with the extra money? And then they tell you what they really want. I want my dream car, right? I want that dream. What is it? One of the team members said it, a Ford GT350Z. I think I might have messed up on the Z, but it was the final V8 that was made by a Ford Mustang, and it's this beautiful car, and it's loud as can be. And I got to go with him when he went to pick it up from the dealer, and he bought it. It's like that's awesome. What a great excitement and opportunity to be there with them. What do they want? right? You connect from day one on your onboarding, get to know what that is, and then remind them as you're going through the process. But also, when we talk about a family, think about children, okay? If your child breaks something at home, how many people would say something like this? I'm too busy. I'm not going to deal with it right now. So I'll ignore it and hopefully it goes away. No one, right?
Right.
So why is it that team, when it comes down to team members, people do that? Oh man, a team member makes a mistake. Nobody's perfect. No one is perfect. I'm not perfect. I'll be the first one to tell you I've made all the mistakes. So the team member makes a mistake. Do we just ignore it and come back and hopefully it fixes by itself? No, that's where coaching comes into play. Help them get good. And then as they get good, find some of the gifts that they could just work on a little bit and they could be great at. Yeah. So I don't know who said this, but they said, you know what? Most people are not great at anything. They're good at things. And they're good at a few items. Now, if you ask them, many of them, they actually know what they're terrible at. And they're trying to improve their terribleness to just be mediocre at it. It's like, wait, it's like we got this backwards. Why don't we just work on the few things that we're good at and become great at one or two or three things? And that sets you apart from anybody in the world, in the whole world.
Beautiful. Great tips. So first thing is who we are as a business, the mission, the purpose, what are we here for? How do we want to accomplish it? The values, the culture, get the people that fit in, train them really well, and just grow and also know, what are their goals, help them reach them, and coach them and train them to get better in the things they're already good at instead of focusing on the things they're bad at.
Yes. And final thing. Just one.
Final thing.
One. And only if you realize that they were not the right fit for the organization, you made a mistake, it happens. Help them move on to another organization where they can thrive in.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. What were you going to say, John? Yes.
That's a good point, because otherwise you're doing them a disservice, right? You don't want to keep the people that you don't want to keep. You want to keep the people that need to be there.
Right.
We could go on. I would love to talk about DISC and about EOS, but I feel like we have a sort of accomplished a round story of challenges, opportunities, and especially this culture thing, this community thing. We've talked about Zig Ziglar and the significance it has on your life and how this philosophy actually makes you able to make a challenge into an opportunity. I have two questions that I ask anybody that comes to the studio, either online or physically in our office. If all the billboards, and normally I would say in the Netherlands, but I will change it for you to the world. Yeah. If all the billboards in the world would be yours for a day, and you could put any message on those billboards, and everybody in the world would see those billboards, what is a message that you would, what words would you set on the billboard?
So, it's interesting, right? I can't remember what year this was. A few years ago, we had one of our members, okay? Her business is a very interesting type of business. It's also probably one of the most difficult businesses I've ever heard about. And her business is to help people die. Think about that for a moment. These are terminal patients. These are people that have gotten to, I have a month to live.
Right, and like a hospital.
Right. And this is whether she would go into their house or they were in a specific facility. But her business was to help people in their last month, last week, last hours, and the number of people that she held their hand when this person passed. I can't even imagine that. I cannot even,
No.
I can't even put it into my mind what that is, to do that, not just once, but over and over and over. And she said it was her calling. She considered it.
That's the word that came to my mind.
Exactly. What is interesting is that she had, I mean, in one case, the guy was maybe a billionaire, several multimillionaires, and many folks that just did not have anything to their name. So we're talking about all sorts of people here, financially speaking. You want to know
all classes.
Right. One thing they all had in common, every single one, that they all said at the end of their life, one thing that all of them had in common: I wish I had more time with my family.
Really?
A universal thought that kept popping up over and over and over and over. And it's like, man, at the end of our lives, are we going to look back and say, I wish I had? Right? And nobody wants that.
No.
Or are we going to say, I'm glad I'm dead?
Right.
So if you're asking me if it had a picture with a quote, I would just put in there next to it, are you going to say, I'm glad I did, or I wish I had?
Wow. That's powerful. It's interesting that you bring up this, because it really fits the whole thing that we've been discussing, because in some ways it's not about building a business, right? I mean, you guys, and Howard has been saying this, and to be honest, I never understood the quote until recently, because of things happening in my life, where it says a business is not a goal in itself or something, but it's a vehicle to reach your life goals, right?
Yes.
But imagine me in 2016, like 8 years ago, reading the book of Howard, The 5 Secrets of a Phenomenal Business, for the first time. The only thing I wanted was to build a business.
Right.
And then when you're building the business, there comes a moment where you understand it's not about the business. It's about what the business actually makes you able to accomplish, especially with the team itself, with the people in the business, for example.
Absolutely. Yes.
So, yeah.
I'll add one thing
All
to
right.
one thing, because I want everyone listening in. Some of the folks listening in may not be the business owner.
No.
That quote applies the exact same way for you. Your position exists for one reason only, and that is to help you achieve your life goals, your life dreams. What are your goals and dreams? Who do you want to become? And if you recognize that it is a tool that's going to help you there, my goodness, build the tool, get better at the tool, master the tool, master the business side of it, grow it so you can accomplish bigger and greater dreams. And just remember this: make your dream big enough that it fits everybody around you.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Last question. And with all your books behind you, it should be an easy question. What book, and maybe it's not one, but maybe it's hard to choose for you, but what book made the biggest impact in your life?
Oof, that's hard. Very hard. It's almost like a progression of books throughout my life, right? Where you could say, right, you could say, okay, See You at the Top from Zig Ziglar. Where, okay, that's part of where it started, because I started listening to all these concepts from Zig as I was building this idea. Then another one from Zig afterwards was Secrets. I forgot the title.
Closing the deal.
Secrets of Closing the Sale. Oh my goodness, it took me a second, right? As soon as you said closing, it brought it back. So Secrets of Closing the Sale. Yeah. Because then that helped me in the time of where I was in the position inside of the organization. Then I started learning more about leadership. Now I could pick a whole lot of John Maxwell books, right? Inside of that one. Yeah. And there's, I mean, 100 to choose from on that point. But if you're going to start somewhere, just start with the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership that help you to build kind of a structure to build on. Then you start getting to a point. Yeah.
By the way, go on. we'll put all these links to these books in the show notes.
Perfect.
So, yeah, go on. Love it.
Perfect. And then you get to a point where you're feeling like, man, I'm not accomplishing enough stuff. I'm spending too much time, wasting time. And then at that point, you start thinking of a small, little, helpful book like Brian Tracy's Eat That Frog. Right? And then it's like, okay, man, and now I have some tools, these ideas, but still something is holding me back. And that's where Howard's book, FTI, Failure to Implement, comes in. Fantastic. Then you start building, you start creating more, and then you're building a team. And as you're building this team, you're thinking more in leadership, but tactical leadership. Then extreme ownership comes to mind. So you start building that structure, build the team, but owning everything, every decision, every single opportunity. And you're realizing you need to communicate better with the team because people are different personalities and different ideas. So positive personality profile. Yeah, PPP. It's always like with the 3 Ps by Dr. Robert Rome, where you can start to understand the model of human behavior. And it's like, all right, great. Now I start to build the bottom part of the team, but you start to get to a point where you can't accomplish it all, right? And then you look at the book Traction by Gino Wickman to help to create a structure of the organization moving forward with a clear picture moving ahead. But here's the thing, you need more clients, and that's where Storybrand comes in. And if you can't figure out how to attract that, you're going to get stuck. So then I start thinking, okay, that's where that message comes in. You learn that not make yourself at the center. You're not the hero. And then you start creating that, not just for marketing, but for everything else, which then that leads me to getting good at coaching. And that's where coaching for performance. I'll leave it there. I know I just mentioned way too many books. Coaching for performance comes in. But I'm going to say one last one. If I don't say this one, I would do something wrong. And it's this one. There's a quote that came from Gary Keller. Gary Keller is the person that started Keller Williams. He wrote a book called The One Thing. The One Thing. It's been around for a while now. And in the book, The One Thing, Gary Keller says something that completely changed my life. He said this. I'm going to leave this as a final message for everybody, because I know we're finishing up on our time, and it's this. There's a lot of people who want to accomplish a lot of stuff. There's no question about it. He said, if it's not scheduled, it doesn't exist. From that moment on, when I heard him say that, I started putting everything on my schedule. We had John Maxwell at our conference, and he said, look, within 5 minutes of meeting you, I can tell you if you're going to be successful or not. And I thought, what a mean thing to say to everybody. And he said, all I have to do is look at your daily agenda. The schedule. What is the one thing that everybody has 24 hours? Time.
Yeah.
Time. People can make more money. They can work on their energy levels. They can do a whole lot of things, but they cannot make more time.
No.
So I know that was the answer. What'd you say, Don?
Yeah, no, well, I love it because you're a book lover. We give each other tips from books. Anytime that I hear you say, read this, I'll buy it and read it. We have a book club in the business, right? We books are important. And I think there's also this quote where it says, 5 years from now, you'll be the same person like you are today, except for the people you meet and the books you read. And so it's important. I love it. I want to thank you for your energy. If people want to know more about you and phenomenal products, where do we send them?
Very easy. Just go to howardpartridge.com. And that's PARTRIDGE. It's always hard to say it. It's always hard to spell it, but just howardpartridge.com. Join us at an event, or just start right there. Start with one of the books, just like Don did, 5 Secrets. You work on that one. You work on those 5 secrets. You're going to have a phenomenal business. Absolutely.
Awesome. We'll put the links in there. There's many times an opportunity to go to a free webinar that you guys give. And Yeah, it's amazing. So thank you so much for your
Thank you.
time on the podcast. And well, see you next time.
Absolutely. Thank you, Don. It was a pleasure. It was an honor. And just thank you for letting me share a little something about me and a message for everybody else out there. And just for everybody that as you're listening in and you're thinking, man, who's this dude? What are they all about? I am really now nobody special, but I do implement and I do work on things every single day. So that quote that I said, or what would be on the banner, you got me thinking about this. Are you going to say, I'm glad I did, or I wish I had? The choice is out every single day. Thank you, Don. I appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you very much for listening to the Storybrand Podcast. I hope you enjoyed this interview with Santiago Arango. We've been talking about the importance of challenges in our lives and the opportunities they bring. We've been talking about our attitudes, the attitude of gratitude, and how to deal with challenges in our lives and in our businesses. And we've also been talking about the importance of community in our business as well. Santiago has given us some very clear steps that we can take to build a culture of community within our business. And a business is really not about having a business. A business has one purpose only, and that is to reach our life's goals. And if you're not an entrepreneur, you're a manager, a professional working in a company, your position is to help the company move forward and for you to reach your life goals. Really beautiful. Please take a note at the show, look at the show notes. Please go to howardpartridge.com. Get a hold of one of his books, for example, The 5 Secrets of a Phenomenal Business. Santiago, at the end of this beautiful conversation, has also been talking about a lot of books that you can read for different topics. We've put them all in the show notes, and I want to thank you, and I hope to see you next week. Bye-bye.